Elon Musk and Donald Trump sat down with Fox News host Sean Hannity, where we learnt more about DOGE. And putting it simply, Elon Musk revealed that the goal of the department is to cut the deficit by $1 trillion.
The overall goal is to try to get $1 trillion out of the deficit. And if the deficit is not brought under control, America will go bankrupt. This is a very important thing for people to understand. A country is no different from an individual in that if an individual overspends, an individual can go bankrupt, and so can a country.
Now, the Democrats and the mainstream media are doing everything they can to fight against Elon Musk and DOGE, that they are, of course, forced to acknowledge that there is wasteful spending because there are too many receipts just to keep up with. But they admit, although there's waste, they've shown no support in wanting that to change. They're suggesting that getting the smartest man in the world to go through the numbers to stop wasting billions of taxpayer dollars is somehow dangerous.
Of course there's some wasteful spending, but you don't use a meat axe and cut everything. We need to look at each program. We need to go through Congress and see what's wasteful and move to eliminate it, and what's very not wasteful but very much needed. I'll give you one example. They went after community health centers in Medicaid. They're among the most efficient producers of health care we have, yet they tried to eliminate them.
DOGE has targeted the USAID, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Education, and what has been exposed has been shocking. Millions spent on DEI projects around the world, money handed to terrorist organisations, potential kickbacks to those in power. And as Elon Musk said, Americans should be mad learning that this is where their hard-earned money is going. The DOGE subcommittee member, Tim Burchett, has clashed with CNN host Pamela Brown after she rolled out the same talking points from the Democrats, the exact same ones we just heard from Chuck Schumer, that essentially DOGE's cuts are too aggressive.
Humans will make mistakes, ma'am, but currently these are bloated programs. You have no-show employees that are angry that they're having to go back to work, that they've moved. And they're not.
No one's disagreeing. There's bloat and waste.
Jobs were.
No one's disagreeing.
Well, then why are y'all not exposing it? Have y'all even talked about? Hey, Mozambique, we sent them $10 million for circumcisions. Okay. I mean, goodness gracious, ma'am, Americans are paying.
We've been covering at length
salaries.
Where the money is going to.
No, you haven't. All y'all do is run down Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and you continuously do this, and that's why your ratings are in the tank, ma'am. All
right, Congressman Tim Burchett, we're going to leave it there. I do appreciate your time coming on and having this conversation. Thank you very much.
So far, DOGE estimates it saved taxpayers $55 billion, and there is a long way to go. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have blasted the Democrats and mainstream media outlets who don't want to see the DOGE team going through the books and cutting the waste.
Elon called me. He said, you know, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. No, they said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, It's just so obvious. They're so bad at it. I used to think they were good at it. They're actually bad at it, because if they were good at it, I'd never be president.
Joining us now is Brent Buchanan, GOP pollster and messaging strategist. Brent, thank you for joining us. Let's start with DOGE and just what's been exposed. We know $20 million has been spent creating a Sesame Street in Iraq. $59 million has been spent on luxury hotels for illegal immigrants in New York City. We're hearing that $520 million was spent on consulting for the environment, $42 million to research and drive social behaviour change in Uganda, $2.3 million for strengthening independent voices in Cambodia, and $21 million for voter turnout in India. I mean, and that is just to name a few. Every day we're learning more about where this money is being spent, where it's being wasted, and Elon claims that in some cases there are essentially blank cheques going out. They don't even know where this is going, let alone where it's being wasted. What's the feeling among voters in the US? Are they happy that this is being exposed, that this is coming to light, or are they buying what some of the mainstream media outlets is pushing, that DOGE is moving too fast?
Well, it's about negative 10 degrees Celsius here right now, but everybody's staying warm because their hair is completely on fire in Washington, D.C. They're just flipping out over all of these cuts. But when you talk to regular people outside the bubble of Washington, D.C., they actually love how fast Donald Trump is moving, how much he's cutting, and they really believe that the entire government system here is broken, and that until we get to a point where it actually doesn't function at all, then there haven't been enough cuts. I'll tell you what, when I moved up here 6 years ago, I definitely got into the wrong business. I should have gotten into the multicultural international expansion opportunities being funded by the U.S. government.
But then you'd be out of a job. You might have made some money and then you'd be out of a job. Look, there are reports that Elon Musk and the DOGE team is now weighing up whether American taxpayers should get refund checks following the massive cuts in federal spending. There are calls for a $5,000 DOGE dividend payment to taxpayers due to the recent savings or that has been delivered by DOGE. Elon Musk says that he's going to check with the president about this. But Brent, can America really afford to be doing this at the moment? Probably not.
You know, when you're the bank, I guess you can print money and do whatever you want with it. But I would say that most Americans would actually rather see this go towards getting our deficit down, because one of the biggest challenges, and I think you experienced this on Australia too, is just the cost of borrowing. And the ability to purchase a house or a car is so much more expensive now than it was before COVID. And a good bit of that is driven by how much higher the interest rates are. And that is a factor of how much government spending there is. And so that's really the message that the Trump administration and Elon Musk need to be talking about, is they need to set a realistic goal of, we want everything you purchase, including your house, to cost less when you do it. And that is why we're doing this. And then maybe once we pay off our $30 whatever trillion deficit, we'll start sending checks back to folks.
Let's look at the polls. Donald Trump has recorded at least a 50% approval rating in the last 3 surveys. Just this week's Economist YouGov poll reveals that 50% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of the presidency. And this comes after a CBS poll found that 70% of Americans believe that Trump is delivering on his promises, which is, of course, painful for outlets like MSNBC that have to cover this. They've gone with the headline, Trump's policies are hurting Americans, but he's winning the PR battle. Look, it's been a month since Donald Trump has been in office. What's your sense of what's going on the ground, how people are feeling about this administration?
Really just a month? I mean, that's kind of hard to imagine. It feels like he's been president for at least a year at this point for all he's gotten done. I mean, I would say that in this 1 month, he's accomplished more than Biden's handlers accomplished in 4 years. And there's a really interesting factor that we look at in polling, and that is not just approval of the job the individual's doing. It's also looking at how favorable or unfavorable is that person. And I would say historically, those numbers are nearly identical. So if 42% of people are favorable of a candidate, they're usually about 42% approving of the job. One thing that we've noticed in our polling is there's actually about a 4-point delta in net difference between favorability, unfavorability, and then job approval and disapproval. And that's something that in 15 years of doing polling here in the United States that I've not really experienced. And I think it speaks to the fact that there's a group of individuals who don't necessarily like Donald Trump, but they're definitely willing to put up with a dislike of him as a person in order to get the benefit of what he is doing as the leader of this country. There's also a group of individuals that we tracked from our exit poll that we did on election day, and that was people who had not voted in the 2020 election, or they voted for Biden or somebody else, but not Trump. And then those voters who fit in that category but voted for Trump this time. And in talking about these spending cuts, what's fascinating is that subset of voters, even though it's not very big, they are 61% supportive of these reductions in federal workforce, in cutting federal agencies, in reducing government spending. And I think it tells you a lot about where the Republican Party is headed, that the types of people that are turned off by these cuts and by what Trump is doing are the exact people that are turning themselves into a minority on the left side of the aisle in the U.S.
This analysis from CNN I found really interesting, explaining that Trump and the GOP have actually reshaped America's voter base.
Donald Trump and the Republican Party has changed the electorate. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at party identification, Democrats versus Republicans. You go back to 2017, 5 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. You go to 2021 when Joe Biden was starting out, look at that, 6 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. But look at what's happened in February of 2025. Look at this. Republicans, there are more Republicans in the electorate than there are Democrats. Republican +2. So Donald Trump and the Republicans have remade the electorate. They've turned some people over from being Democrats or independents to become Republicans. New folks have entered the electorate who are more Republican leaning. And so when you combine that with the fact that Republicans are really, really behind Donald Trump, all of a sudden you get a winning recipe whereby you break the normal rules of politics and give Donald Trump that positive net approval rating when he had pretty much a consistently negative one in term number one.
It's interesting, even being here in Australia, you can really feel the shift. You can really feel that this has been a huge trend that we've seen just, I suppose, the last year. Do you think that trend will be here to stay?
I do. There's definitely work on the parties of the center right around the world to go build relationships with these new voter bases. If I told you that the Republicans were going to be the party of the working class, the party of minority voters, and the party of young voters, if I just made that statement 30 years ago, I would have gotten laughed off a stage and cut off a television show. But that is who is becoming the Republican Party. And the Democratic Party and parties on the left globally, because we do work all over the world, including Australia, are becoming more and more marginalized by only the party of coastal elites and of the highly educated. And so Republicans can't take this for granted going into the midterms next year. They've got to get out there and actually build their own brand and relationship and say, this is who we are as Republicans. We're not just with Donald Trump. This is what we believe. And that's going to be what is the long-term impact of Donald Trump's election. And I do believe it will continue.
It's interesting. Hollywood celebrities still don't seem to get the MAGA movement at all. Here is Tom Hanks appearing on SNL, acting to be a racist Trump supporter while wearing a MAGA hat and refusing to shake someone's hand. Just take a look.
Now, speaking of church, can I say something? If more folks went to church, we wouldn't be in this mess we're in now.
You know what? I agree with you, Doug. I'd like to shake your hand, sir. Here we go.
No,
oh, no. Oh, no. It's just a handshake. Yeah, it's just a handshake. Yeah, all right. You're welcome at Black Jeopardy anytime.
Terrible acting, a terrible joke. You know, when is Hollywood, the actors in Hollywood, those on the left and the far left, going to come up with some new material?
What I think is even more interesting than that is the fact that it's actually cool to be conservative now. I'm 40 years old, and when I got into politics in high school, I was the dork because the Democrats were the cool kids. And what's really funny about this skit is, one, Tom Hanks is a pretty good actor, and though I hate his politics, I got to admit he makes some really good movies, is the fact that white voters are not who elected Donald Trump. So the margin that Donald Trump got out of white voters in 2020 is exactly the same margin that he got out of white voters in 2024. It was actually Hispanic and black voters, mostly men, but it's some women too, that moved Donald Trump across the finish line. So for them to make a skit like that is so disingenuous and shows so how out of touch they are when it was actually non-white voters who put Donald Trump in the White House.
Excellent point. I think someone needs to tell them. The problem is these celebrities do have some influence. You know, it has dropped a lot. I don't think anyone really cares what Taylor Swift has to say about politics, but there are still some people out there that seem to idolize these Hollywood celebrities and believe that Donald Trump is such a danger. Here's this lefty proudly rather claiming that should rather choose violence against Trump supporters.
I woke up and chose violence against the Red Hats today. I will wake up and choose violence against the Red Hats every day.
Oh my goodness, absolutely insane. What do you make of it?
Well, that's also the party who wants to end threats to democracy by basically suspending democracy, like trying to get rid of the mayor of New York just because they don't like him. And I'll tell you a personal story is I have a 4th grade son who is very into Donald Trump, and we live in an area that Kamala Harris won at 80% of the vote. and he wore his red MAGA hat to school the day after the inauguration. And one of his teachers said, "You have to take that off. You're not allowed to wear that in this school." And the librarian actually came to his aid and told this other teacher, "You're not allowed to tell kids what they can and can't wear in gray. You're allowed to wear that as much and as you want." And to me, that one small moment shows that there, even in deep blue insanity areas like where I live, that there are folks who are starting to open up to see that the left is totally unhinged and they're complete hypocrites in what they say, like what this woman just did here in the clip.
Absolutely. Look, finally, I want to talk to you about Barron Trump, because the president of New York University's college Republicans was forced to resign for calling Barron Trump an oddity on campus. Kaya Walker told Vanity Fair that the 18-year-old just goes to class and he goes home. I think, look, it seems like a fair outcome that she was forced to resign.
I'll take the contrarian view here. And I think as Republicans, we need to lean further into free speech. And that means when we don't agree with people, that we can still say you have the right to say that, as long as it's not violence like that crazy liberal in the clip that you showed beforehand. But is that the right thing to say about the president's son? No. Was it a smart thing to say? No, it was completely stupid. But she should have the right to say that, and we shouldn't be canceling people out because they make dumb statements.
Fair enough. Brent Buchanan, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Really appreciate you making the time.
Thank you.